What is up, mortals? It is Chara zor-el here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 7 of What If Izuku Was a Stand User. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So, we begin. The students of Class A were outside the school grounds waiting for a bus to take them to the USJ facility. Aizawa said in an earlier class that the students would be undergoing rescue training, which would put the students in realistic simulations of natural disasters. While our green-haired protagonist was waiting for the bus, he was approached by a familiar face. Hey Deku, how come you're wearing your PE clothes? Where's your costume? Uraraka said, approaching Izuku. The green-haired teen said that his green tracksuit from the other day's training had been destroyed beyond repair. Because of this, he had no choice but to use his PE clothes as his hero costume was still in the process of being created. As the Deku-Uraraka duo chatted further for several more seconds, the bus had finally arrived, prompting the newly chosen student rep Tenya Ida to call the students to board the bus in a highly spirited manner. Man, Tenya's really killing it with the class rep position, Uraraka said to Midoriya as Ida continued blowing his whistle. I'm still surprised that you stepped down as the rep despite getting 3 votes. Yeah, well, I don't know. To be honest, I never really saw myself as the leader type. Besides, you saw how Ida stopped that crowd of panicking students earlier today when the press broke into the school. Even I don't think I could do something like that. The students eventually piled in the bus as they began their route. During the trip, students began talking about what they would likely be going through in today's training. The conversation swayed from one direction to the other until the yellow student Sato, sitting next to our main protagonist, brought up Izuku's recent combat training session. So, Midoriya, that was some fight you had with Aoyama and Bakugo that other day, Rikido said to Midoriya. Heck, the way it ended was something else. I'm pretty curious about what your power is. Is it some kind of telekinesis or something? The attention of most of the students honed in on Izuku, as he and the other students on the bus were very curious about what exactly his quirk was. Midoriya struggled to get his responding words out. He still had a bit of underlying anxiety about talking about his power to certain people, mostly since the first person he spoke to about his power, All Might, reacted to the boy as if he was crazy. Ever since then, he was a bit cautious about openly talking about his ability to certain people. Well, I mean, I could talk about my power, but I'm just afraid that you guys will think I'm crazy if I tell you what it is, Midoriya mumbled. Crazy? What are you talking about? You told me about it during the exercise the other day, Jiro said to her former exercise teammate. Heck, I saw your power in action when you pacified Bakugo. It's not that weird. Besides, have you seen the quirks that exist in our world? I mean, I've seen people in business suits with cacti for heads. Your quirk is badass compared to something like that. Midoriya was beginning to think she was right. He had to stop being uncomfortable with speaking of his power to others. With a sigh, he decided to tell those listening as straightforwardly as possible what he could do. He told everyone that he could summon a ghost-like entity that can do any number of things for him. He also spoke about its unique ability where it could mess with people's heads. At first, it could alter emotions and one's state of mind, but after the fight training from the other day, it evolved to a slightly stronger form, which can now alter a person's senses, involving eyesight, touch, smell, and other factors, along with all of the earlier benefits from Personal Jesus' first form. He even brought up the odd phenomenon where it was invisible to everyone except himself. Izuku thought he was going to be called a loony by most of his class for what he said. But to his surprise, most of the students believed him and were even intrigued by his power. So, you have a quirk that lets you summon an entity to fight on your behalf. So it's the same kind of quirk as my dark shadow, but it's invisible. Interesting. I must say, it's pretty rare to find someone with an emitter quirk like yours and mine, Midoriya. Even Denki joined the conversation. Dude, it all makes sense now. During the fight training yesterday when we were watching your match, we had no idea what your power was. I mean, every time Bakugo charged you for an attack, it was like something blocked his hits and knocked him to the ground. We thought you had some kind of a force field power, but you have a freaking ghost thing you can call on command? That's freaking awesome! But there's one thing I was wondering. During the fight the other day, it looked like you were having some kind of a breakdown or whatever. I mean, I don't mean to be nosy or anything. I just want to know if everything's alright with you. Midoriya could understand where Kaminari was coming from and assured him that there was nothing to be worried about. Yeah, I understand. I mean, I was planning on attacking Bakugo with my power within that moment, but it must have been bad timing, coincidence, or whatever, but before it could attack, it went into a metamorphosis-like state. I thought it died during the fight, but instead it went through some kind of evolution and changed forms. Wait, so you thought your ghost thing died? But not died and instead evolved? Like the way a Pokemon does or something? Kaminari asked. Kind of? That's when Izuku had a flashback to the start of class this morning when Mr. Aizawa went over the results of yesterday's training. He could still remember his teacher's words as if they were said to him minutes ago. Before we talk about today's hero training, I want to go over each of your performances from the other day. I'll start with you, Midoriya. You performed fairly and was the only one in the class who won the challenge mostly on your own. Well done. However, while I have questions about your power and how you were able to do some of the things you did, I can't ignore your sudden fit of crying in the middle of the exercise. Now, I don't know what the root cause was for that, or what's going on in your personal life, but had the fight not been a training exercise and instead a scrap with the real villain, you would have been killed, captured, or worse. If you need someone to go talk to about something going on in your life, go speak to Hound Dog. But other than that, I expect that what happened to you during training will not happen again. Understand? As he was in thought, his head snapped back to the present time as Aizawa let the class know that they arrived at their destination, which looked to be a large sports stadium of sorts. Just outside the bus's door was an astronaut-looking hero that Midoriya instantly recognized as the rescue hero 13. The astronaut hero greeted the class and brought them inside to show them what she had in store for the day's exercise. Upon entering the building, everyone was faced with what looked like an amusement park. As you can see, there is a setting for every known disaster you will face as pro heroes: a flood area, an earthquake aftermath, a burning city block, and many, many more. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or the USJ for short. Aizawa walked up to the astronaut hero, asking her where All Might was, since he was supposed to be here. She didn't give the 1A teacher a direct answer, but instead some kind of hand-gestured language that the students couldn't understand. She tried telling Aizawa that All Might used up too much of his power earlier today and was in the teacher's lounge recovering. He wasn't too happy at the response, but thought everything should be okay with him and 13 watching over the kids. Before the students could begin their training, 13 wanted to remind the class of her powerful quirk, which, while it can be very useful in a disaster recovery situation, it can also very easily kill. She also brought up that there are those in the class with quirks that could very easily kill as well, which is why she brought up that in a pro-hero situation, whether it's taking down villains or saving those from a disaster, the students must be careful with how they use their powers, as one wrong move could result in the death of those around them. That was the main gist of the speech to the kids, which was met with a resounding applause. After her motivating "with great power comes great responsibility" speech, a strange phenomenon began to occur where the lights in the building began to flicker as the electricity in the building dimmed down. At the center plaza, a purple smoke portal appeared by the fountain with a slew of villains pouring out of the opening, all led by a blue-haired man with prosthetic hands all over him. Students were confused as to what was going on, but Aizawa quickly told them that the villains coming out of the portal were not part of the exercise, and that they were in real danger. As soon as the last of the villains came out of the portal, the villain with prosthetic hands glared at the group atop of the stairs. According to the schedule we stole, All Might was supposed to be here, but I just see a couple of pro heroes and a group of kids, the blue-haired villain analyzed. You better not have taken us to the wrong place, Kurogiri. Impossible. The intel was from a legitimate source, the gas villain uttered to his partner. All Might should be here. Perhaps something came up, preventing him from appearing. Shigaraki, we pull our forces back and attack another day? The man responded with a no. If we leave now, they'll raise security around the school grounds for weeks, maybe even months to come. We won't get an opportunity like this again. We need to play with the cards we've been dealt. The supposed leader of the group signaled the small fry villains to make their way to the group atop the golden stairs. Perhaps if we raise some hell and take a few lives in the process, All Might will come out of hiding. As the villains continued their march, the 1A teacher goggled up, knowing he was going to have to get physical. 13, call the school. Notify the staff that we have a villain attack. She responded by saying that she already tried it, but someone was messing with their communications. Even Kaminari had no success in getting a signal, which meant that they had to get help the old-fashioned way. Aizawa told the class to make a run for the exit as he was going to single-handedly hold them off. Wait, Eraser, you aren't planning on taking out these villains all at once, are you? Izuku questioned his sensei. There's too many of them and your fighting style is meant for one-on-one combat and stealth. Wouldn't it be best if you came with us? Aizawa looked at the forest-haired hero in training and told him that he knew what he was doing and jumped down the stairs to fight the intruders. Jeez, is he really going in there like a gung-ho lone wolf? Kaminari said as he watched his teacher fly down the stairs. Don't worry, Kaminari. Shota's one of the best fighters I know. He should have no problem holding them off as we get help. Now come on! 13 rallied the students to follow her to come to the exit, with Midoriya standing behind as he watched Aizawa take down each villain one by one like an ace. Izuku realized he seriously underestimated what his teacher was capable of. Midoriya, this isn't the time to be spectating. We have to leave now, Tenya said to Izuku, causing the Greenette's attention to hone on the class rep. Yeah, sorry, let's go, Midoriya said as he followed the group to the exit. I hope you can take on these villains yourself, Aizawa. If something happens to you, we can't help you. Aizawa took down more villains by the second as the students made their way to the exit. Shigaraki, who was watching from the fountain, was getting irritated that a single pro hero was holding his own against dozens of quirk-wielding thugs. Kurogiri, this Eraserhead guy's class is making their way to the exit, Shigaraki pointed out as he scratched his neck. Stop them and teleport them all around the building. I'll have the small fry deal with them in chunks. The cloudy figure accepted Shigaraki's orders and teleported to the exit, blocking the class's escape as he formed into a large, imposing figure of darkness. It's a pleasure to meet you all. We are the League of Villains. We don't mean to intrude on your class time. We're just here for All Might. But there appears to be no sign of him. Perhaps there must have been a change of plans. Whatever the case, we do intend on killing him before this day's end. And if any of you leave this building to get help, I'm afraid you'll only make our plans more difficult. 13 popped the cap on one of her fingertips as she prepared to use her quirk on the villain, but Bakugo blasted his way towards the shadowy figure with Kirishima beside him, with the two of them unleashing hard-hitting shots upon the villain. But they found out the hard way that their quirks had no effect on the villain. 13 told the headstrong students to get out of the way, but it was too late. Kurogiri expanded his body towards the students as he told the victims that he would be scattering them across the arena and to their deaths. Within the moment, a fog of purple darkness surrounded each of the students as screams could be heard from every direction. The only thing Midoriya could think of in this situation was to fight. What the heck is this? Personal Jesus! Attack! Act 2 spawned from Midoriya's body as it began ghost punching the black mist around its master, but discovered that Personal Jesus' punches were completely ineffective against the villain's misty body. The mist around our protagonist got darker by the second, until he had the strangest feeling that he was floating in the air. His vision came back to him as he realized he was falling from several dozen feet into a body of water. Thankfully, he wasn't injured from the fall, and swam back to the water's surface as he began to piece together that the villain he encountered had a warping quirk, and that the group the villain was with were actually serious in wanting to take out All Might. Shortly after, a fish villain came into Midoriya's view, swimming its way towards the teenager. He panicked and summoned his stand to defend himself. The stand symbol ring on its shield spun as he readied itself to attack. But one of Midoriya's classmates one-shotted the villain as she wrangled her tongue around the boy to quickly get him to safety. Midoriya was heaved onto a boat in what he deduced to be the shipwreck zone. As the boy got a bearing on his surroundings, he was joined by Tsuyu Asui, the froggy girl who saved his life, along with another student, Minoru Mineta, who Izuku knows as the boy who sits behind him in class. You okay there, Midoriya? The girl asked. Izuku responded that he was, and thanked Asui for saving his life, with which she responded by telling him to call her Sue. Midoriya looked out to the other zones of the USJ, as he could hear faint sounds of screams and villains going at it from different parts of the building, mostly from the central plaza where Eraserhead was fighting. Midoriya told the other students that he couldn't stop thinking about how the gas villains said that they were planning on killing All Might today. He hunched the theory that when the media broke into UA earlier today and caused a panic in the cafeteria, the villains must have used the opportunity to sneak into the school and find All Might's work schedule, which is how they deduced he would be here. Well, if you ask me, I say these villains are in for the thrashing of a lifetime, Mineta said confidently. Once All Might shows up, he'll beat these villains till there's nothing left of them. As much as Izuku and Asui wished that were the case, they both believed that the villains had an actual thought-out plan for taking out All Might here. No group would go through the amount of hurdles needed to pass UA-level security if they weren't absolutely certain they could accomplish their goals. As the trio on the boat talked about the situation at hand, Mineta began to freak out as roughly 12.5 villains appeared from the water and surrounded the boat, each one with murderous intent on their mind. Midoriya tried to piece together the possible reason for the League of Villains' attack and wanting to take out All Might. He thought that maybe it had something to do with his status as the #1 hero in all of Japan, or the symbol of peace. As Midoriya continued thinking, he came to the realization that it didn't matter what the League of Villains' endgame was. They knew these guys meant business with killing the #1 hero. And as heroes in training, They had to do what they could to prevent the bad guys from completing their goal. Okay, you two. It's clear that we have to stop whatever plan these villains have with taking out All Might. But before we do that, we have to get out of this mess we're in. So how's about we go over a plan on how to proceed from here? Asui and Mineta both agreed with their partner as the three of them hunkered down by the main cabin to go over each of their abilities, to see what they had to work with and formulate a plan. Asui volunteered to go first, with explaining the details about her frog quirk. Meanwhile, at the steps of the USJ, Joji used his quirk to find the location of the students that fell victim to Kurogiri's quirk. He shared uplifting news to the others that everyone was fine, but scattered across the facility. The news made the few students sigh in relief, knowing the others were okay, but they now had to focus on the present threat in front of them. Kurogiri was still blocking the exit to the USJ and wasn't going to let anyone leave to get help. Class rep, I have a plan. Run to the school and notify the staff of what's happening here. 13 stated that because none of the alarms were going off and that all forms of communication to the outside world were disabled. The best strategy in this situation was to run and get help at the main school, and with Ida's super speed, backup from the school would be guaranteed to arrive as soon as possible. At first, he had second thoughts about the plan, but 13 and the others pointed out several potential reasons the villains were likely trying to keep them inside. They knew that even if one student got out, their plans would be ruined, and they knew Ida was the best student for this endeavor. The other students got into battle positions in front of the misty villain, ready to defend their class rep as he readied his quirk to make a break for it. In your current situation, I do believe getting help is your only option, but it's rather foolish to explain your strategy in front of the enemy. Kurogiri scoffed as he expanded his ghastly form to attack those in front of him, but 13 was one step ahead of him. She activated her black hole quirk and began to suck up the violet mist that made up Kurogiri's body, as she told the class rep to ready himself to run for the exit. Back at the shipwreck zone, Mineta and Midoriya finished going over their powers and were halfway through the process of going over an exit strategy Izuku formulated. He just needed to know one thing about Asui's quirk before the plan could be set in stone. So, Asui can— Oh, sorry, I meant Sue. Yeah, Sue. Anyway, you mentioned that you can jump really high. If you were to grab Mineta and hold me with your tongue, can you jump far enough to reach that water slide over there? The frog girl looked at the colossal water slide between the landslide zone and the boat for a few seconds before she responded. It doesn't look that far away from here. If I don't jump directly at the foot end of the slide, I should be able to get pretty close to it. Asui spoke. With that, Midoriya had everything he needed for the plan to go forward. It was a simplistic one, but required the help of all three members to execute. But not everyone was keen on Midoriya's exit strategy. Are you crazy? Mineta cried as he was on the verge of panic tears. The plan won't work! These guys could potentially kill All Might, and you think we can just lead them on in some sort of uphill goose chase? The best plan is for us to stay here and wait for a pro from UA to help us! Midoriya turned to the crying student and assured him that they had no choice in the matter, and that this was the best option for getting out alive. Okay, should I go over the plan with you guys one more time? Midoriya asked. Or are you guys all set with everything? Asui understood the green net strategy while Mineta was still on the verge of a panic attack, still believing that staying on the ship was the best idea. Unfortunately, Minoru's idea would not last long as one of the villains with the water hand quirk slashed at the boat, cracking the hull of the ship in half and causing the vessel to sink into the water. Within seconds, Mineta began to freak out and started throwing his sticky balls into the water. Midoriya tried to get the boy to calm down, while Asui criticized Mineta's life choice of becoming a pro hero. Mineta began screaming about how he just became a high school student and that he didn't expect to be on death's doorstep this early in life, and how his biggest regret was not being able to touch a topless woman's breast, prompting Asui to be disgusted at the boy's remarks. The froggy girl then noticed Midoriya running out from the cabin of the ship as he said to the two that they had to move now, otherwise they would be sitting ducks for the villains surrounding them. But Mineta was too terrified to move a muscle, despite the ship sinking. Izuku had to get Mineta to snap out of it and come to his senses, so he decided to summon his personal Jesus to use his mind-altering ability on Mineta. Stan then placed his hands over Mineta's temple, prompting the grape juice hero in training to yell out that something was grabbing his head. Midoriya tried calming the boy down by telling him that he was using his power on him. Within seconds, the boy appeared to ease out of his panic attack and entered a state of relaxed ease. Okay, it worked. Asui, grab Mineta. We need to get out of here now! Midoriya ran to the stern of the ship with Asui, who grabbed Mineta in the process. Okay, let's go! Asui wrapped her tongue around Midoriya as she and the others jumped into the water. The froggy girl swam as fast as she could towards the bottom of the water slide with several of the villains hot on her tail. Within seconds, Asui made it to the foot end of the flume and flung Midoriya onto one of the rocks at the end of the slide, with Mineta being tossed up in the air moments later. Okay, I'm coming. Hold on a sec. Before she could finish her sentence, she was ambushed by two villains who caught up to her and attempted to go for a killing blow on the girl. But he quickly ducked down into the lake as the two villains pursued her into the water. Midoriya screamed out Asui's name as he lost sight of her. Oh no, Asui! She didn't make it up in time! Dang it, we need her for this part of the plan! We're trapped! Midoriya said. Oh dear God, please don't tell me that we didn't lose frog boobs! Of all the people, why her? Midoriya, look out! Mineta laid eyes on the fish villain Midoriya encountered earlier as he leapt from the water towards the boy. That frog girl's not gonna save you this time, kiddo! Before the fish villain could get a chomp out of the boy, he was knocked over the edge of the water slide into the lake somehow. Neither the villains nor Mineta could tell what happened. The cause of this phenomenon was Midoriya's stand, which clocked the villain in the head with its shield before it had a chance to chomp the load stand user. Mineta, get behind me! Midoriya ordered. Without Asui, we can't move up the water slide any further without the risk of sliding into the lake. The best option is to fight him off here. Two other villains attempted to attack Midoriya, but met the same fate as the villain earlier, as they were knocked into the water. All while Mineta watched on in terrified confusion. Another villain threw his harpoon at the boy, but was deflected by Midoriya's stand. At this point, Izuku noticed that Act 2's shield was giving off the same humming sound it made during the other day's combat exercise. What are you doing? Kill these idiots already! The Water Hand Quirk villain yelled as another pair of fish villains attacked Izuku, but this time, Act 2 spun its symbol ring, locked it to a symbol, and like the other day, the stand punched the back of the shield, letting out the same gong-sounding shockwave that seemed to paralyze the fish villains, making them unable to move as they flowed down the slide into the lake. However, unlike the shockwave used on Bakugo the other day, Midoriya noticed that this one was louder and had more oomph to it. He also noticed the humming sound from the stand shield had stopped. The boy quickly pieced together that the humming sound from Act 2's shield was actually some sort of a power amplifier for its shockwave ability, as in the shield hums louder the more hits it takes. And the louder the hum, the more powerful the shockwave. After witnessing another pair of fish villains losing to Midoriya, the main fish villain signaled to the others to hold their attack as he realized the villains were falling for their strategy. That's what the kids' plan was. These kids knew they couldn't take us in a wide open lake where we had them surrounded, so they moved the fight to an area where they could more easily group us up. And by the looks of it, they were planning on using the frog girl to make their way up the water slide to lead my group on a goose chase of sorts. But clearly these kids forgot that I can easily destroy this water slide just like I did with the boat. The leader of the group told the others to prepare themselves, as he was going to cut the wooden supports of the slides, sending the two heroes in training into the water where they'd be vulnerable. But he was surprised by a sneak attack by Asui, who leapt up from the water and delivered a kick to the back of the villain's head, knocking him out as the frog girl jumped from the villain's shoulder onto the slide as she regrouped with Midoriya and Mineta. Asui! You're okay! Midoriya said as he and Mineta were both ecstatic to see her. I told you to call me Sue, Asui responded. Now then, about the plan. Asui wrapped Midoriya up with her tongue and grabbed Mineta as she jumped from the water slide, hopping from rock to rock as she made her way up the artificial flume. After them! Don't let them get away! The rest of the fish villains jumped onto the slide and began their pursuit on Asui and the gang, as she was just barely able to outspeed the villains. Midoriya reminded Mineta about what to do for his plan and began to use his pop-off quirk to throw sticky balls into the water. Because of the current of the stream, the sticky balls floated down the water slide, clinging onto both rocks and most of the fish villains that were in hot pursuit of the UA students. Thanks to Midoriya's utility support, most of the villains ended up sticking to either themselves or the rocks along the slide. Mineta kept popping the balls off till he started to bleed, and Suyu reached a far enough distance along the water slide to jump into the trees and bushes that separated the landslide and shipwreck zones. Asui, Midoriya, and Mineta had successfully lost the villains that were after them, and took a moment to catch their breath, with the smaller of the three noticing a bloody bite mark on Asui's left thigh. Yeah, that was a close one, Asui muttered. I don't want to admit it, but they almost had me back there. But we passed the shipwreck zone, so I guess it all worked out. Now we just have to figure out where to go from here. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.